My name's Adam McLaughlin, and this is the Church Marketing Ideas Podcast. Practical ideas to help your church build trust in your community. Welcome to the Church Marketing Ideas Podcast, episode 15. We're here to help you build trust in your community. So today my guest is Ben Stapley. He's going to be telling us about how to use live video on social media to reach more people and give us some tips and tricks and some hands-on ideas and practical ways that we can use live video to reach more people on social media. Hey, do me a favor, would you, when you get a chance to, or when you're interacting with somebody that you've heard sponsor the show, would you just let them know that you heard them on the Church Marketing Ideas Podcast? You know, I only have sponsors for people who I've used their product, I endorse their product, and I really believe that they will help your church. That's the only way you can get a sponsorship on the Church Marketing Ideas Podcast. So these are people that I trust, and I would love it if you would connect with them and let them know that you heard about them right here on the Church Marketing Ideas Podcast. At the end of the podcast today, we're going to be talking about social media volunteers because somebody's asked a question about how do we know when it's the right time to hand over our social media password to volunteers? How do we know that it's time to give them permission and access to represent our brand on social media? So that question's coming up at the end of the podcast after my interview with Ben Stapley. You know, for over 20 years, Ben has created and captured moving and memorable moments for individuals, nonprofits, and corporations across the globe. He also serves on the executive team at Christ Fellowship Miami as the Weekend Experience Director, overseeing the production, worship, creative, communication, online, and guest service departments. After this word from our sponsors, here's my conversation with Ben Stapley.
Hey friend, Ryan Wakefield here from Church Marketing University, and here's what I know about you. I know that you got into ministry because you love to see lives transformed. You love it when people get to hear the gospel, when they commit their lives to following Jesus, and it transforms everything about their life, about their family, about their neighborhood, about their community. That's why we got into ministry. And here's the good and the bad news, is in our society today, connecting with people has never been easier, but it's also never been harder. Easier because we've got all these tools to connect and to reach into our communities. Harder because there's very few people out there that actually teach us how to use these tools the right way and in a way that's super effective, which with reaching in, starting relationships, and being able to share the gospel. So if you're listening to the Church Marketing Ideas Podcast, you're in good hands, but I also want to let you know about a boot camp, what we call the Church Marketing Boot Camp, that you can get free access to. It's your starting point for reaching into your community. We're going to take what we found is the most effective tools that growing churches are using and show your church how to use them step by step to reach into your community. You can get access to this free Church Marketing Bootcamp by going to churchmarketingideas.com/CMU for Church Marketing University. churchmarketingideas.com/CMU. And let's get started.
Ben Stapley, my Canadian brother, thank you so much for hanging out with me today.
Adam, great to be here with you, my favorite Christian church communicator from Canada.
See, and we had this discussion beforehand. The more qualifiers you have to put on it, the less important you probably are.
You are still, do not downgrade yourself. Still important.
I'll take it. I'll take whatever I can get. Ben, I'm so excited to be hanging out with you today and chatting about live broadcasts and how that can build influence on social media. And tell us a little bit about your experience with live broadcasts specifically.
Yeah, so I've been in the church game for a while now, and live has been I'm going to date myself. It's been a newer phenomenon. So this is a tool that when I first came into ministry, wasn't there. I've been in ministry almost for about 20 years now. And so so first of all, it was something that I came on to the scene with when it came out, just because, hey, new tool, right? A lot of us early adopters like to play and tinker with things.
Right.
And then over the past couple of years, and at different churches have had a chance to implement live videos when we felt it was the best. It's not always the best thing to do. It's got its place. And I'm sure we'll talk about this place and time, but have used it and have seen good levels of engagement through it, where people are, you're catching them off guard, you're engaging in them in a new way, and you're ultimately seeing some type of spiritual fruit from that. And so I've been pleasantly surprised and pleased with the results on this tool in the toolbox for church communicators.
So let's jump right into what you just hinted at. And how do you know when it may or may not be time, or what qualifiers would you put in place to say, yeah, my church is ready for live, or no, let's wait on that and until we have X, Y, Z in place?
Yeah, I would say all churches are, if you have one of these, you're ready. If you have a smartphone, you're ready to do it. Now, how you do it and how frequently you do it is probably the more layered conversation topic here. But I would keep the bar really low for a lot of churches, just because the tools are there. We can kind of go through that if it's helpful now to unpack that.
Yeah.
But just
okay.
Okay.
Let's unpack that.
Yeah. So like, first of all, we can go on the gear side of that, right? So what's the basic gear that we need to execute this? So we talked about a phone. You need a phone to pull this off. Some additional things that I would encourage, I don't want to keep that bar too high for entry, but
Sure.
real low here is I encourage you to consider if it's going to be a live video. We all know that the longer live videos get more traction. It takes people a while to find it. And then generally speaking, 10 to 20 minutes is a good duration that you see people continuing to jump on. And your analytics bear out the fact that longer videos are good. So if it's going to be a 10 to 20 minute video, holding it in your hand over that time is going to get shaky and it's not going to look good. It's going to be Moses, right? You need somebody to support the arms or they're going to start to dim and diminish. It was a deep cut there. So you need a tripod for it. The next thing I'd say is like adequate lighting. Right now we're talking and I don't have any extra lights on me, but I just have the light from outside washing me, so I look decent on camera. So just realizing where the natural light is already coming from. You can invest in low, inexpensive lights as well to bring on additional lighting onto your talent if you don't have good room lighting. And then the last thing for the gear, I think I would say is, so we got the lighting. Probably the setting. So the gear, tripod, lights, consider your room or get additional lightings, and then the setting itself. So for the setting, I usually like to be in a controlled environment. We've tried to do live videos outside, like, hey, it's going to be kinetic, it's going to have extra energy, stuff's going on in the background.
Right.
But we've all seen those like news blooper videos, right? Where somebody like comes in from the back or they're in the background doing one of these things. And so I usually like a really controlled environment. So that's like, in other words, controlled indoors instead of outdoors.
And would you recommend, if somebody's just using their phone, would you recommend something for audio? Like, is their headset sufficient, or would you just use the phone mic? Or
in a controlled environment, if we're close to each other, you can get away with this. That being said, usually you can get an attachment onto your phone for a directional mic that's going to point at your talent. And I can give you examples, and I'm sure you can probably link towards that in your show notes.
Yeah.
But that's a great, that small investment, but $100 increases the audio quality, which is great. And then the other benefit too is you're not trying to run a wire to somebody and you're doing this and they can't walk away. So a directional mic that plugs into your phone jumps up the audio quality. And that's, great flag. That's another essential piece of gear that I would invest in to make it sound good. And then oftentimes if you're outside too, since it's directional, it's not capturing everything. It's just capturing like the funnel in front of it. You're going to kind of cut out some of that additional noise. You might not hear the airplane flying over top as much as I'm in Miami, close to the airport. And whenever we're outside, we know we have like a 5-minute window that we can record before another plane flies over top. So we're like, go quick.
Now.
Yeah. So that's some of the essential gear to get any church, we're not talking mega church or even like medium-sized churches of, 200, 150. That's pretty inexpensive to get you guys up to speed to leverage live video.
So what I hear you saying is we could actually get live with just the phone in our pocket. A few things we want to do is get in a controlled environment. We want to get around some area with some natural light. to light the space well. And then some add-ons to enhance the quality could be things like a microphone or some more controlled lighting. And I also just want to define or describe the conversation, because we're not just talking about live video in the context of showing our Sunday experience or our Sunday service.
Yeah.
So tell us some other ways we can utilize live video even outside of the initial gut reaction of let's live stream our service.
Yeah, and I'll say I probably jumped into the deep end of the pool going there already, thinking that hey, this is for churches that hey, that's kind of low hanging fruit to do your service. This is additional stuff. How would we do additional content? So beyond that, like some real basic stuff would be, I like to say there's tons of message content. So anyone, I've done some preaching in the background. I'm sure a lot of your communicators may have done as well. You'll spend maybe 15 to 20 hours crafting a 40-minute message, but you know that there's a lot of content, a lot of good content that hit the cutting room floor that you're not going to present during your message, but it's still intriguing background. You know what? Hey, Did you know the Greek origins of this word? I always felt disappointed as a communicator because I was just communicating in the room when I used to do this before live, extra content. Now, teachers, communicators, pastors could leverage live before the weekend or after the weekend to pull in some of those nuggets that they weren't able to. I've seen churches do this well with leading in. Sometimes it's even standardized. Like every Friday night, the pastor will jump on his phone, and it's standardized so people know. So like if you're going to do this weekly or on a regular rhythm, when people know that it's landing, it's helpful because people can go to their devices and anticipate that you're going to be there. So I saw a pastor for a couple months do it on Friday night at 8:00. Hey everybody, I finished my manuscript. It's great this weekend. I can't wait to see you guys this weekend. But hey, there's one thing I wasn't able to get in, and it's this. In verse 2, and they pull out that nugget, which is, it's good content, first of all, and then it builds anticipation for the upcoming weekend as well. So I've seen people do that on the front end, or pastors do that on the back end as well. Hey, as you're driving home, it's Sunday afternoon. Hey, you got the message. That was great. There's one last thing I wasn't able to put in, and it's this. And so I would look for that pre or post weekend content with your message. So that's one way to leverage it in terms of the content. Another one is behind the scenes stuff. So I've seen, I recently saw Craig Rochelle with Life Church doing this, where he walked people through his experience. This is when I show up to our service and I have to go through my ritual of what I'm doing. This is what I do. I come in here, I stop and I talk to these guys, I high five this team, and then I connect with this point person because it's critical, and then I get my mind into the text, and then it was, I don't attend the church, but I'm a fanboy, and I found that fascinating to see how does this guy do this week in and week out? What's his rhythm? How does he get geared up for game day? And I found that fascinating. Your congregation at your church will find that fascinating about your lead guy or gal. That, hey, what's the behind the scenes? How do they get there? That's super helpful. Even bands, even as like bands are rehearsing or practicing for the weekend. Hey, how is the sausage made? The more you're able to pull back that curtain, people find that intriguing. And so that's some good content that I would give. And then the last one I would do is I call it spiritual support. I did this, I got 2 examples, and I'll reference them, but I'll send the links to you so you can show people what we're talking about, Adam. One was at Liquid Church when I was there as a creative arts pastor. We went into a message series called Spiritual Warfare. Basically, how do we engage the adversary? And it was a conversation topic our people didn't know anything about. And we knew that if we go into this and just teach a message series, 4 to 6 week series, a lot of it's going to go over their head in terms of the practical stuff. Or they're going to start to engage in this, and they're not going to be fully equipped, and they're going to feel under-resourced and ill-prepared. So how do we midweek prepare them for something that's pretty intense for us? It's new ground that we're taking. We did a Wednesday 1 hour long live experience with some worship, a lot of people writing in, posting their comments saying, hey, I'm struggling with this, or I'm pushing into this area of darkness. Could you give me some prayer support? Or I've seen a victory here. And that midweek spiritual support was able to help our congregation push into this, because we knew 40 minutes on the weekend is not enough. This isn't just a series about how to, do a better devotional life, or how to work on some of the relationship. It's not middle of the road. It's not mamby-pamby.
Right.
It's our most spiritually intense series, and we need to give additional support. That's one of the ways we did it. One of the ways we did it here at Christ Fellowship, I've been at Christ Fellowship in Miami for the past year and a half. And then one of the ways we did it down here was we did a call to action. It was a strong evangelism series. We equipped our people with tools in terms of, this is how you can help evangelize to the people in your lives, your neighbors, your coworkers, your friends and families. Gave them those tools. But again, we knew that they needed spiritual support during the course of the week to come in and to say, I've been pushing into this relationship. Nothing's happening. Can you pray over it? Or I've had some victory here. God's demonstrated himself faithful. Let's celebrate this. And that was another thing we did. We told our congregation, hey, we're calling you to step towards this, but jump in for the spiritual support every weekday, Monday through Friday, from 12 to 12:15. We're going to be on 2 platforms, Facebook Live and Instagram Live. And we're going to be having this encouragement to encourage you, and then to celebrate what God's done as well. We found that to be super helpful with our people. They engaged with that content, and then we saw the fruit of it. A lot of people stepped up their levels of evangelism as well, and we had a lot of support, stories of celebration on the back end. So those are some big contents behind the scenes, extra message content, and then spiritual support when needed.
So I see the value for sure in video, but there's something magic, and there's the power of live. And I'm hoping you could tell us a little bit about what is the power of live video compared to pre-recording video and putting it up in place. So give us a little bit of rundown there.
Yeah, the 3 big things would be transparency. It would be a conversation, and then it's prioritized. So first of all, transparency. So we are all aware here in the West, we're pretty much in a post-religious, a post-Christian culture. That coupled with a lot of prominent religious leaders and Christian leaders having moral failings have really compromised our position and our authority in culture. Right. So a lot of people are looking at any institution, especially organized religion, with a very skeptical eye. How do we speak into that? How do we, instead of just, no, this is the word of God, instead of like doubling down on God's authority, how do we demonstrate transparency and vulnerability? How do we do both of those? Because we're usually good at one, but not the other. Right. And live videos do that, right? So like, this isn't polished. You and I are just talking. I'm going to flub and say some wrong things or stumble and look for words. But you know that I'm a human. Right. And based upon this conversation, we have a greater trust in each other just naturally because we know it's authentic. When you are able to do that as an organization, as a church, and this applies to any organization, it increases the transparency, increases trust. And so that's the first huge value that a church has to do this. The second one is the conversation end of it. A lot of our communication from a church perspective is one way, right? I take the stage and I preach at you for an hour and nothing comes back at me. Or frankly speaking, a lot of our social media is that way as well. Right. Come to this event, do this. And it's a lot of it's a monologue. It's not a dialogue. And so the live allows for the monologue. We can talk back and forth. People can be putting in their comments real time. So that's a huge benefit. Now, on a very practical note, if you're doing this, again, low-hanging fruit, do the live video, but have someone in the same room, same room, to be responding real time to the comments that are coming on. So it actually is a conversation, right? So sure. like leverage it, right? Don't just have the phone going on and all these comments are going on and no one's engaging it, because then no one's going to engage it next time. So it's a platform for conversation, but make sure you're equipped there by having somebody on another phone engaging comments as they come in. And then the last thing is it's prioritized. So like for now, the social media platforms are still prioritizing live video over produced prepackaged videos. And then the algorithms, it's hitting farther up. I know like right now, currently, Instagram is giving you that notification when someone you follow goes live. It's even highlighted in a special circle up there in the top. As long as they continue to do that, we need to leverage that because we just get our content to people faster and in front of more eyeballs. Those are the big reasons why.
Right. So transparency, conversation, and it's prioritized. So you might think to yourself, oh yeah, I'll just turn on my phone and record this video here, and then I'll be able to, upload it later, or I could take a second take at it. And the reality is, if you do that exact same process, except you go live, I'm thinking in a position where a pastor might use their personal account, right? Or a pastor might use the church account and go live, you're going to get way more exposure. And really, at the end of the day, that's going to help more people engage with that content. The reason you're doing this, I would guess, is to help more people engage. And so the fact that it's live gets prioritized on a lot of the platforms.
Yeah, for sure.
So talk a little bit about the traditional sense of live streaming and what that looks like. Where would you recommend a church starts with actually live streaming their services?
So yeah, if you haven't done that before, there's two big platforms that are out there. The easiest and the first that most of your guests and listeners will be aware of is Facebook Live. So it's the biggest platform that's out there. It's had the live option the longest around there as well, and so that's a great starting point. Again, you could do it very low end where you take a phone. I would encourage this to tap it into the audio, the soundboard, so you have decent audio.
Right.
People will be willing to compromise the video experience if it doesn't look like 4K and it's not super crisp. But it's funny, our ears are not as gracious. That if it's off the camera mic in the room, it's going to sound terrible, and no one's going to watch beyond 5 seconds. So that's like, I would not do that. You can get away with a low-end camera. You cannot get away with low-end audio. So do that, and then your lighting should be fine because I'm sure you have some type of stage lighting in your environment, so it's going to look decent from that lighting. I always think, AVL, audio, video, lighting. Do we have all three there and are all good enough to get it across the board that people are going to be engaging, right? So the level isn't a Hollywood blockbuster. That's not what we're aiming. We're aiming for content good enough that people are going to engage in. So that's the biggest platform out there. And then the second biggest platform that a lot of churches use to embed on their website is CHOP, the church online platform developed by Life Church. Great platform. I think it's been around for almost 10 years at this point. And like Life Church, who create a lot of great resources and really resource the capital C church. YouVersion, I think it's Open Resources is another one. Yep. CHOP is another great example of them just going to bat for the large C church, making this tool available. Beyond making it available, they continue to tinker with it and make it better. So that's a great tool. It's fairly easy to embed on your church's website, where then you can go there as well, right? So you want to first and foremost, you want to go to where people are at. Facebook Live does that because you go to where they're at. They're already on their phones. But then as a secondary platform, some people are coming to you. They're coming to your website to check you out. To embed that experience there as well gives them a chance to see it. I always like to say the nice thing about that is they can try before they buy. A lot of people want to see what the church experience is like before they come on out to a church experience. You say you're hospitable, I want to see it. You say you're diverse, I want to see it. You say you're not just asking me for money, I want to see what that looks like before I come on out. And I'm freaked out by the live environment. And then you always have the additional benefits of launching a church online experience, so that this isn't just a trial thing, but this is a legitimate spiritual community in a digital environment. So that's like the next level for people to leverage live services.
So one of the things that I hear when we've talked with church leaders about going live and having the personal interaction and, just pull up your phone and go for it, right? Let's just give it a try. Sometimes what I hear things like, I'm not ready. I'm going to stumble too much. I'm not going to, I'd rather have a proper camera and not my phone. And really these things are just excuses. But rather than just calling them out as being excuses, there are some ways that we can prepare somebody who's going to be in front of the camera. So talk a little bit about how we outline or how we can create a strategy for the talent who's going to be on camera.
Yeah. So what you're alluding to, that imperfect action always trumps perfect inaction. So hey, go for it, but it shouldn't be terrible action. Like it's an imperfect action, but it's not terrible action. How do we not do that? A couple of things. Like the first one is have an outline. So when I say an outline, if it's a 10 to, again, this isn't the you streaming live your services. We're talking about probably additional content here. If the pastor's going to get up and talk about his message before the weekend, or it's the worship leader and they're introducing a new song and they want to talk about, they only got 30 seconds to introduce it during the service, but there's a much deeper, interesting, robust theological undergirding to it, and the worship pastor would love to spend 5 minutes talking about that. Okay, that's great. How do they do it? An outline, some bullet points. So for me, I don't know how, I'm not saying this needs to be, and it shouldn't. It shouldn't be a manuscript. You shouldn't be like, I'm reading off a manuscript and going line by line, because that ruins the authenticity and the transparency that we've already talked about being a benefit for this platform. But there should be, in your mind, you should have a roadmap of what you want to say, some basic bullet points to get through, so that there's a logical consistency and coherentness to what you're saying. First, so outline. Second thing is practice. Allen Iverson, right? Practice. Practice to make sure that it gets better a couple of times before you actually jump up and to record. Another real basic thing is, and I'm actually doing this with you right now, where I'm not looking at the screen where I see you. I'm actually looking at the camera, so that from the viewer's experience, it looks like I'm looking at them. So as you are holding your phone up, it could be tempting for you to look at the screen to see how you look. And that's good, like, to frame yourself initially. Okay, like if something in the background that I'm not aware of that I should probably take out, dirty laundry back there. But after you figure the framing out, then figure out where the camera is and just look at the camera the whole time, because it'll make it more engaging for your audience. Two other things, or I guess one last thing would probably be asking open-ended questions. So we talked about this being a conversation, the benefit being a conversation, but you have to ask questions for it to be a conversation.
Sure.
Or again, it's a monologue. So you're live, that's great. Going back to the worship leader example. Hey, this weekend is a great new song that we're introducing. Yada, yada, yada. Hey, what are some additional songs that you think we should drop during the next year? I'd love to hear from you guys and to start incorporating those. If it's the teaching pastor after the service, hey, here's an additional point I had. But beyond me just saying what I learned, what did you take away from today's message? Jump into our comment section right now and tell us what you took away from this message. So as you're performing this, you need to be peppering in multiple questions, not just one, multiple questions during the live experience, so that people engage with it as well.
So one of my favorite personal tools to use is Instagram stories. And the reason I love it is I can practice in front of a camera, and I could practice some of those things like you talked about, staring at the camera, or I want to talk about 1, 2, 3 things. But the great thing is it disappears after 24 hours. Or if it's really terrible, you can just delete it immediately, right? And it's in short little segments. So if 15-second segments. So if you have 3 minutes of things to talk about and you mess up one of the 15-minute segments, you can go back if you really want to and delete it. This preps me for when I'm about to go live, or I'm about to do, a podcast interview, because I notice that I move my hands like this a lot, and I try not to as much because it can be distracting.
No, but I disagree. I'm a big, I've been pointing at the camera. I disagree, because here's the reason why. Because most of us, when we're on social media, we're viewing the experience in the muted mode. Right? Like we're scrolling on through, because we're probably at work and it's underneath the desk and we're just like, we're bored. And so because of that, for me, it's one of those stop the scroll moments. Like if you and I are just talking heads here, people are probably going to scroll on by. But if I'm like animated, like, hey, this is the one thing I need to tell you, it's going to catch people visually before it catches them audibly. Like I always say you have to capture people visually first, and then they will give you their audio attention. But if you are not capturing them visually, they are not going to give you their audio attention. So keep waving your hands, Adam. You're engaging me.
So I love that. And what I would love to hear from you is some ideas that as we're practicing, even if it's you're just recording on your phone and nobody else sees it, but you're watching it back to practice. Or in my case, I use Instagram stories because I kind of like the feedback anyway. What are some of the things that you want to be aware of, or what are some of the most common things that you want to try and pick up on as you're practicing to get better for live broadcasts?
Yeah, one is if we already talked about if it's a static shot, then like have a tripod to do that. Another like pet peeve of mine is like we're video conferencing here. I've actually like, literally taken my laptop and I put it on a stack of books so that we're on eye level because it looks weird. Like this is you want to replicate what people see naturally. So most times I'm naturally on eye level with somebody else. Most people, if they don't think about this, they have their laptop lower, and then the perspective is looking up, and it shows your double chin, and I see up your nostrils, and it's not a very flattering look. And I'm not the most handsome guy, so I need everything in my advantage to make myself look decent. So get the camera on eye level is one thing if it's a stationary shot. Now, if you're going to do a walk and talk, you're in the neighborhood. This is like I've seen pastors do this. Hey, they're on a prayer walk. Hey, I'm walking around my neighborhood right now, my city, and I'm praying over right now. And I want you to engage with me as well. I want you to pray. And I've seen, guys do this. They got the camera, gals, and they'll walk around a city and they'll talk. Now, here's the thing. If you do a walk and talk, you need to make sure that whatever distance your camera is from you, you got to keep it stationary. So, because here's the thing. The background's going to continue to change and morph. But if the foreground is doing that as well, then it's really discombobulating. Like that's, I'm going to try to like replicate it right here. So like as like I turn and the camera turns, if I'm staying stationary, it's good. But if I'm turning and the camera's turning, people are getting seasick. So So keep yourself, if you're holding the phone and you're moving, keep yourself locked because your background's going to be changing, and no one's going to vomit on you as they're watching, which is good.
So yeah, we want to avoid the seasickness effect.
Yes.
But that's a great thought about being eye level and kind of trying to recreate the conversation as it could be if you're actually standing there having the conversation with someone. Ben, any last thoughts on why pastors or leaders or worship leaders really need to have live as part of their strategy for engaging with their community?
Because people need to know who you are, and they need to get beyond your persona and your stage presence and your crafted identity, which those are, I'm not saying throw the baby out with the bathwater. Those are
Right.
beneficial in terms of identifying your individual brand or your organizational brand or the aspect about God that you highlight. But coupled with that, people ultimately also need to know your vulnerabilities, your realities. If you're going to lead them to greater depths of intimacy with God, if they don't see you demonstrating that first and foremost by yourself, people can only follow you as far as you've gone. So if you're not willing to do that, and to a degree, I'm not saying you have to bear all your sins with the whole general public, but you need to be willing to show some of your foibles to people so that they know it's safe. If you're safe and willing to do that, then they may be safe and feel safe to do that with their creator. But until you take that initial step, people are going to say, I'm not buying it. You're not doing it. Why should I do it?
So follow up to that, I know some of the context of what we talked about was, highlighting a piece of the sermon that we didn't have time for on Sunday, or previewing a new worship song, or kind of explaining the context of a new worship song, or answering a question somebody might have about the sermon. But I'm wondering about things like wandering around the grocery store, or at my kid's little league soccer game, or whatever it might be, trying to change a tire or washing the car. What would your recommendation be for helping pastors and leaders create a context where they kind of identify themselves as human outside of just the church content?
Mm-hmm. So a great example of this was at Liquid Church. Tim Lucas was going through a series. It was called RTDs, religiously transmitted disease, not STDs, RTDs. And we talked about spiritual diseases within the church that we oftentimes just turn a blind eye to. Like, it's okay. And one of them was hypocrisy, the religiously transmitted disease of hypocrisy that a lot of Christians struggle with, but are okay with, because it's not drunkenness, it's not sexual immorality. I'm okay to be a hypocrite. And then what he did was, over the course of the week, he preached about it. And then he said, and you know what, I'm going to call myself to account. And every time, and it'll probably be multiple times, that I do this over the course of the week, I'm going to jump on and I'm going to identify that. And it was fun. He was at a little league game, I think, and he was sitting there watching the game. And internally, he was judging the other sports moms and sports dads who were overcoaching their kids. And he just sat in judgment of them. And he recorded himself. He's like, hey, guys, I'm at a little league game and I won't say who it is, but a parent is doing this. And I'm super judgy about them because of that. I'm a better parent than them. I'm not a soccer mom or soccer dad. But guys, I'm being hypocritical here. And he peppered in those things, which was a great example of that. So those are moments of vulnerability that can do that. And to let your people know you're going to do it beforehand, they can anticipate it and look forward to it in the upcoming week.
Ben, it has been such a great conversation and so many practical ways that we can take with us and get more exposure on social media in our community and be more transparent and real with people in our community who might, regularly just see the polished presentation. Mm-hmm. And live is a great way to do that. If somebody wants to find out more about some of your ideas or they want to connect with you, what's the best place for them to get that information?
Yeah, I'd say jump on my website. You can follow me. It's a great avenue to find out where I'm at other places. benstapley.info. It's a great starting point in terms of dialoguing with me and finding out more information about me. And
you also do a lot of coaching with churches.
So
all different things. How can we track down your coaching services?
Yeah, great question. So if individually, if you want that, or as a church for consulting, would love to help you do that. benstapley.info/coaching. You'll be able to find all the information there.
And what sort of things could somebody look to you for in their coaching strategy?
Look at you, Adam. You're just selling the heck out of me. I'll take this. So my sweet spots would be service execution, creative innovation, and then probably multi-site and leadership. So those are some of my sweet spots. If in relationship to a small group curriculum or kids oversight, I'm not your guy. Don't go to me on that. Don't know what the heck's going on in those fields.
It's all good. benstapley.info/coaching. And you can track down Ben there. You can find him on all the social media channels. If you follow his Twitter and his Instagram, then he's always putting video tips on there to help your church create an experience that's going to impact your community. Ben, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I really appreciate your time.
Adam, thank you so much for letting me be here with you.
Hey friend, Ryan Wakefield here from Church Marketing University. And here's what I know about you. I know that you got into ministry because you love to see lives transformed. You love it when people get to hear the gospel, when they commit their lives to following Jesus, and it transforms everything about their life, about their family, about their neighborhood, about their community. That's why we got into ministry. And here's the good and the bad news, is in our society today, connecting with people has never been easier, but it's also never been harder. Easier because we've got all these tools to connect and to reach into our communities. Harder because there's very few people out there that actually teach us how to use these tools the right way and in a way that's super effective with reaching in, starting relationships, and being able to share the gospel. So if you're listening to the Church Marketing Ideas podcast, you're in good hands, but I also want to let you know about a boot camp, what we call the Church Marketing Boot Camp, that you can get free access to. It's your starting point for reaching into your community. We're going to take what we found is the most effective tools that growing churches are using and show your church how to use them step by step to reach into your community. You can get access to this free church marketing bootcamp by going to churchmarketingideas.com/CMU for Church Marketing University. churchmarketingideas.com/CMU. And let's get started.
Thank you for taking my question. I'd like to hear your thoughts on getting volunteers to run our church's Facebook and Instagram. I'm not sure how and when to be ready to give someone our password and let them represent our church to the public.
I love this question because I know that we can't just be everywhere all the time, and we need to empower volunteers to help us reach our community and build trust in our community. And at the same time, sometimes it's a bit of a struggle to want to hand over our password information to somebody who's going to represent our brand. A few things that I would do. I would find volunteers who are already doing really well on their own social media. That way you kind of get the idea, the kind of content they're going to be posting in place. Not just somebody who's willing, but somebody who already demonstrates on their own social media that they know what they're doing. Now, you might get somebody who's willing, who's really interested, and you can train them, but I would train them using their own social media channels. So train them and coach them with their own channels. And then once you see they're making it work on their own channels, then you can give them access to the church social media channels. Now, how I would do this is I would give them access with a temporary password for a set amount of time. So this could be, hey, leading up to our Easter service, I would love it if you could help us create some content on our Instagram feed. So I'll give you the information to log in for 2 weeks leading up to Easter, and I would love it if for one post per day, you could create content leading up to our Easter services. And then that way they have a set timeline, you have a set timeline. If you don't like the kind of content that they're creating or they're just not consistent, then you can always just say after Easter, okay, that was a great campaign for Easter. Then you could take back the information and change the password and they no longer have access. But you kind of give them a trial period. Do not just hand somebody who's willing the information to all of your social media accounts. Don't do it. Give them a trial period. Now, if Easter works out really well, you might say, hey, that was great. We've got another promo coming leading up to Mother's Day. Are you interested in helping with that as well? And if you're not, do you know somebody who may be? And if that works out, then Mother's Day works out. Then there's VBS. Then there's, back to church, back to school in the fall. And then in October, there's your trunk or treat. And then you've got a couple leading up to Thanksgiving or some kind of November event. And then you've got Christmas. You can always add on another 2-week stint or another 3-week stint. But what you don't want to do is leave it so open-ended that when you realize that the content might not be what you're looking for, they're inconsistent, or they're not posting the kinds of things that you need posted, then you have a difficult conversation about taking that away from them. Instead, say, hey, we'd like you to help with this campaign. Are you interested? It would run from here to here. Here's what our expectations are. And that always gives you the opportunity to revise that agreement or to talk about whether or not you're going to extend that opportunity. Thanks for the question. Now, if you have a question, just go to churchmarketingideas.com and ask a question. We would love to answer every single question that comes in, and some of them will show up on our podcast.